And now, a word from our sponsors. Are you self-conscious about the things you wear? Do you feel you don't stand out enough? Do you wish you had merchandise that repped your favorite theater company? Well, push those fears aside when you purchase items from the Blank Conversations store. Now you could show off clothing that represents a brand that is so blank, you'll feel stylish wherever you go. By going to www.blankconversations.org/store, you can purchase your very own t-shirt, beanie, hat, or even sew-on patches, starting as low as $7. Order today and we'll throw in some free stickers. Blank Conversations store. We make the stuff so you can wear it. That's just how society works. Thank you, and enjoy the show. Blank Conversations Theater Company presents The Genius by Horace Holley, adapted especially for radio. We now take you to the countryside.
I wonder if you've seen my dog? I was going for a walk, but Rex seems to have grown tired of waiting.
Your dog? No, sir, I haven't seen him. Shall I go look?
No. Never mind. He'll come back. Rex and I understand each other. He has his little moods, like me.
If you were going for a walk...
It doesn't matter at all. I can go anytime. You don't live in this country?
No, sir, I live in New York. I wish I did. It's beautiful here, isn't it?
It's very beautiful to me. I love it. You may have come a long road this morning. Let's sit down.
Thank you. I'm not interfering with anything?
Bless your heart. No, indeed. What is there to interfere with? All we have is life, and this is part of it.
I like to sit under these trees. It makes me think of the Old Testament.
That's interesting. How?
Well, maybe I'm wrong, but whenever I think of the Old Testament, I see a man under a tree.
Yes?
A man who has lived through it all, and found out something real about it. And he sits there calm and strong, something like a tree himself. And every once in a while, somebody comes along, a boy, and the boy talks to him all about himself, just as we imagine we'd like to with our fathers if they weren't so busy. Our teachers, if they didn't depend so much upon books. Or even our ministers, if we thought they would really understand. And the old man, he doesn't say much maybe, but the boy goes away, much stronger and far happier.
Yes, I understand. The Old Testament. They did get hold of things, didn't they?
What I can understand is how nowadays people seem so much more grown up and competent than those men were in a way. And we do such wonderful things, skyscrapers and airplanes, and yet we aren't half so wonderful as they were in the Old Testament, with their jugs and their wooden plows. I mean, we aren't near so big as the things we do, while those old fellows were so much bigger. We smile at them, but if someday one of our machines fell over on us, what would we do about it?
I wonder.
I went through a big factory just last week. One of my friend's fathers, he's the manager there. And all I could think about was what could a fella do if he didn't like it? If he didn't fit in? Nowadays, most everybody seems competent about factories or businesses or something like that, And they've got hold of everything. So a fella's just got to do the same thing, or where is he?
That's the first question, certainly. Where is he? But where is he if he does do the same thing?
Why, he's with the rest, and they don't ask that question.
I'm afraid they don't. It would be interesting to be there if they should begin to ask it, wouldn't it?
Yes, I'd like to be there when some I know ask themselves. But they never will, and why should they?
Well, don't you mean how can they?
Yes, of course. They don't ask that question because the big thing they are doing seems to be the answer beforehand. But it isn't. Not compared with the Old Testament. That's why we have to ask it ourselves. And that's why I came here.
Oh. You want to know where they are, with their power, or where you will be without it?
Where I'll be. I hate it. But what else is there today?
Why, there's you.
But that's just it. What am I for if I can't join in? I came to you. You don't mind talking to me, do you?
Well, on the contrary.
Well, everybody I know is a part of it. So how could they tell me what to do outside of it? I've been wondering about that for a year. Before then, when I was just a boy, the world seemed so full of everything. But now it seems to have only one thing. That or nothing. Then one day, I think I saw a photograph that was cut out of a Sunday paper. And I thought to myself, there's a man who seems outside, entirely outside, and yet he has something. It wasn't all or nothing for him, but I wondered who it was. Then I found your book with the same picture in it. You bet I read it right off. It was the first time in my life I'd ever felt power as great as skyscrapers and railroads, and yet apart from them. Outside of all they mean, like the Old Testament. Those poems.
You liked them?
It was more than that. How can a fellow like the ocean or a snowstorm?
Is that what you thought they were like?
Why they went off like a 14-inch gun. Not a whine about them, not a single regret for anything. They were wonderful. They seemed to pick up the mountains and cities and toss them all about like toys. They made me feel that what I was looking for was able to conquer what I didn't like. I said to myself, I don't care if he does laugh at me. I'll go and ask him where all that power is. And so I came.
Oh, there's Rex now, over across the road. He's wondering who you are. He sees we're friends and he's pretending to be jealous. Dogs are funny, aren't they? But you were speaking about my poems. It's odd that their first criticism should come from you like this. You must be about the same age I was when I began writing. When I wanted above anything to write a book like that, and when such a book seemed the most impossible thing I could do. Like trying to swim the Atlantic or live forever.
It seemed impossible. I should think it should be the most natural thing in the world for you, like eating dinner.
Well, that's the wonderful thing. Not the book, but that I should have come to write it.
But who else could write it?
Well, at your age, I thought anybody could. Anybody and everybody except myself.
Really?
Really and truly. You've no idea what a useless misfit I was.
But I read somewhere you had always been brilliant, even as a boy.
Unfortunately, yes. That was what made it so hard for me. Shall I tell you about it?
I wish you would.
Brilliance. I'll tell you what that was, at least for me. I wrote several things that people called brilliant. One in particular, a little play of decadent epigram. It was acted by amateurs before an admiring select audience. That was when I was 21. From about 16 on, I had been acutely miserable. Physically miserable. I never knew when I wouldn't actually cave in. I felt like a bankrupt living on borrowed money. Of course, it's plain enough now, the revolt of starved nerves. I cared only for my mind. Grew only in that, and the rest of me withered up like a stalk in dry soil. So the flower drooped too, in decadent epigram. But nobody pointed out the truth of it all to me, and I scorned to give my body a thought. People predicted a brilliant future for me. Crying inside. Then I married. I married the girl who had taken the star part in the play. According to the logic of the situation, it was inevitable. Everybody remarked how inevitable it was. A decorative girl, you know? She wanted to be the wife of a great man. we didn't get along. There was an honest streak in me somewhere which hated deception. I couldn't play the part of brilliant young poet with any success. She was at me all the while to write more of the same thing, and I didn't want to. The difference between the great man I was supposed to be and the sick child I really was began to torture. I knew I oughtn't to go on any further if I wanted to do anything real. Then one night we had an artistic dinner. My wife had gotten hold of a famous English poet, and through him, a publisher. The publisher was her real game. I drank champagne before dinner so as to be brilliant. I was. And before I realized it, Nora had secured a promise from the publisher to bring out a book of plays. I remember she said it was practically finished, but it wasn't. Only the one, and I hated that. But I sat down conscientiously to write the book that she, and apparently all the world that counted, expected me to write. Well, I couldn't write it. Not a blessed word! Something inside me refused to work, and there I was. In a month or so, she began to ask about it. Nora thought I ought to turn them out while she waited. I walked up and down the park one afternoon wondering what to tell her. And when I realized that either she would never understand or would despise me, I grew desperate. I wrote her a note full of fine phrases about incompatibility, her unapproachable ideals, the soul's need of freedom, things she would understand and wear a heroic attitude about, and fled. I came here.
Of course, but she didn't follow you? They didn't bother you?
Not a bit. Nora preferred her lonely heroism. In a few months, I was quite forgotten. That was one of the healthful things I learned. Well, I was a wreck when I came here. I wanted only to lie down under a tree. And there it was, under that tree yonder. My salvation came.
Your salvation?
Hunger. That was my salvation. Simple, elemental, unescapable appetite. You see, I had no servant, no one at all, so I had to get up and work to prepare my food. It was very strange. Compared with this life, my life before had been like living in a locked box. Someone to do everything for me except think, and consequently, I thought too much. But here, the very fact of life was brought home to me. I spent weeks working about the house and grounds on the common necessities. By the time winter came on, the place was fit to live in. And I was enjoying life. All the brilliance had faded away. I was as simple as a blade of grass. For a year, I didn't write a word. I had the courage to wait for the real thing. Nobody pestering me to be a genius. Someday you may read that first book. People said I had rediscovered the virtue of humility. I had.
I will read it. And how much more will it mean to me now?
I suppose you know the theory about vibrations. How if a little push is given a bridge and repeated often enough at the right intervals, the bridge will fall?
Yes.
Well, that's the whole secret of what you've been looking for. What you've found in my poems.
I don't understand.
A man's life is a rhythm. Eating, sleeping, working, playing, loving, thinking, everything. And when we live so that each activity comes at the right interval, we gain power. When one interrupts another, we lose. Weakness is merely the thrust of one impulse against another, instead of their combined thrust against the world. When I came here feeling like a criminal, I was obeying the one right instinct in a welter of emotions. It was like the faintest of heartbeats in a sick body. I listened to that. Then I learned physical hunger, then sleep, and so on. It's incredible how stupid I was about the elemental art of living. I had to begin all over from the beginning, as if no one had ever lived before.
That's what you meant in your poems about religion.
Exactly. I learned that good is the rhythm of the man's personal nature, and that evil is merely the confusion of the same impulses. As time went on, it became instinctive to live for and by the rhythm. Everything about my life here was caught up and used in the vision of power. Drawing water, cutting wood, digging in the garden, dawn. It was all marvelous. I couldn't help writing those poems. They are the natural joys and sorrows of 10 years. As a matter of fact, though, I grew to care less and less about writing as living became fuller and richer. People write too much. They would write less if they had to make the fire in the morning.
The first impulse. I see. Oh, life might be so simple.
Why not? The animals have it. Men have it at times, but we make each other forget. If we could only be each other's reminders instead of forgetters.
Yes, but I see the only thing to do now is to go away, like you.
Not necessarily. I was merely a bad case and required a desperate remedy, earth and air and freedom from others' will. I need the country, but the next man might require the city as passionately. Don't imagine that only the hermits like me live instinctively. It can be done in New York too, only one mustn't be so sensitive to others. After all, friend, we were wrong in saying that this power lies outside the world of skyscrapers and business. It doesn't lie outside nor inside. It cuts across everything. You see? For it's all a matter of the man's own soul.
Then?
We can't live in a vacuum. The more you feel the force, the more you must act. The more you can act. And in the long run, it doesn't matter what you do, if you do what your own instinct bids.
Then I could stay right in the midst of it?
Yes. And if you were thinking of writing poetry, it might even be better to stay in the midst of it. Drama, you know. And it's time for a new drama.
It isn't that with me. I can't write. I had one splendid teacher. He used to talk about things right in class. He said that most educated people think of intellect as a matter of making fine distinctions, of seeing as two separate points what the unintelligent would only believe was one point. But that idea was finicky. He wanted us to see that intelligent might also be a matter of seeing the connection between two things so far apart that most people would think that they were separate. I like that. It made education mean something to me, because it made it depend on imagination instead of grubbing. And then he told us about the history of our subject, the history of grammar, how it began as poetry, when every word was an original creation, and then it went to philosophy, as people had to arrange the speech with thoughts, and then science, with more or less exact laws. I could see it. It became alive. And he said all knowledge passed through the same stages, and there isn't anything that can't eventually be made scientific. That made me think a good deal. I wondered if somebody couldn't work out a way of preventing anybody from being poor. It seems so unnecessary, with so much work being done. That's what I want to do. Thanks to you,
Here's Rex. Rex! No, my good friend. I know you will like him. Rex always cares for the people I do, don't you, Rex?
Of course, I see one thing. It's the people nearest to you that make the most difference. Mother, now she will understand. You don't believe in marrying, though, do you?
Well, I certainly do.
But I thought...
Well, you thought because I left one woman and hadn't found another that I didn't care for women? No, others believe that too, but it isn't so. On the contrary, you see, I didn't so much leave her as get away from my own failure. Of course, there is such a thing as a wrong woman. She makes a man a fraction. The better she is in herself, the less she leaves him to live by. 1/20th is less than 1/2, but the right woman, she multiplies a man.
Oh.
Why, you might have told from my poems how I believe in love.
I don't remember any love poems.
Bless your heart. Every one of them was a love poem. Not the old-fashioned kind about fading roses and tender hearts. I sent that book out as a cry for the mate. It's charged with the fullness of love. That's why I could write about trees and storms.
I suppose if I had been older...
It isn't one's age, but one's need. She will understand. Oh, look. The sun has gone round the corner of the house. Is that lunch you have in the parcel?
Yes.
Would you like to make it a picnic?
I'd love to.
I'll get something from the house, and then we can walk to the woods. All right. I'll be ready in no time. Come, Rex.
The Genius was produced by the Blank Conversations Theater Company and presents the cast as follows: Nick Check as the man, and Mateo Garcia-Bryce as the boy. This production was edited by Gus David Sanchez. If you enjoyed today's production, consider donating to the Blank Conversations Theater Company to see the continuation of programs such as these. You can find them at www.blankconversations.org or their social medias. If you are interested in participating in the Blank Conversations on the air programming, reach out to us and find out how you can participate in future programs. Thank you.